In the crowded city of Ajegunle lived a humble family of 5, 3 girls, 1 boy, and their parents. Ada was the eldest. Life was hard, and poverty forced her to mature faster than her years. She carried her family's burden, determined to change their story. Through sweat, patience, and relentless work, Ada finally built something small, a gadget shop where she sold phones and chargers. Slowly, her business grew, and she began to make enough to care for everyone. With time, Ada's hard work paid off. She moved her family from the rough streets of Ajegunle to the island, the better, calmer side of Lagos. She rented a comfortable house for her parents and another for herself and her sisters. For the first time in years, peace and progress filled their lives. Her younger brother, John, had just completed school, thanks entirely to Ada's sacrifices. He moved in with her on the island and helped out at her shop, handling customers and stock. Together they built something strong. One day, John remembered his childhood friend David, a boy he grew up with back in Ajegunle. David was struggling, barely able to feed. Out of compassion, John decided to help him. He pleaded with Ada to employ David as a sales boy. Ada refused at first, insisting she didn't want anyone who wasn't family working with her. But John wouldn't stop begging, calling David family by heart. Finally, Ada agreed. A few weeks later, David came to the island and began working with John in the shop. He looked humble, hardworking, and grateful. Around that same period, John got an invitation for a job interview in Ogun State. He traveled for it, and after days of waiting, his effort was rewarded. He got the job. It was a position at a brewery company with a monthly salary of 400,000 naira. Overjoyed, John called David to share the good news. He promised that once things settled, he would try to get him a spot at the same company. Weeks later, David also got an interview invitation at that same company. John was excited for him. When David arrived in Ogun State, John gave him his house key, telling him he could rest there after the interview since John would be at work all day. That evening, when John returned home, he noticed David wasn't around. Curious, he called him. David answered saying he had already traveled back to the island to tell Ada in person that he would soon resign since he had now been offered the new job. He even added that he was to resume work in 1 month's time. John believed him. He thought David's excitement made him act quickly. But the truth was, David had lied. He was never employed after that interview. The story about resuming in 1 month was just another layer of deception. Days went by, and John decided to visit home. When he arrived in Lagos, something felt off. His sisters were now living with their parents, leaving only Ada and David in the house on the island. When he asked David where Ada was, David calmly said she packed her bags and left 2 days ago. Confused, he tried to call her. Her phone was off. He reached out to her fiancé and friends, but no one had seen or heard from her. Ada had vanished. John grew worried. He returned to work in Ogun State but couldn't focus. He later called David, asking him to help file a missing person report at the nearest police station. Hours later, David called back, claiming the police refused to take the report since he wasn't a family member. That excuse didn't sound right. Uneasy, John took a leave from work and rushed back to the island. When he arrived, David was nowhere to be found. John waited until late, around 2 a.m., before David finally returned home. "Why are you coming back this late?" John asked. David smiled faintly and said, "This is even early. I usually come back around 4 or 5 a.m. That night, John couldn't sleep. Something was deeply wrong. The next morning, he went out to buy snacks from a nearby neighbor who ran a small provision store. The woman greeted him warmly and asked, "Has Ada settled the issue with David?" Shocked, John froze. "What issue?" he asked. The neighbor sighed and told him everything. She explained that David had stolen over 900,000 naira from Ada. Instead of arresting him, she wanted to teach him a lesson, to scare him by involving some soldiers. The neighbor even helped her find the soldier's contact. A few days later, Ada and the soldier agreed to meet. But on the day of the meeting, the soldier couldn't reach her. Her phone was switched off. Moments later, he received a text message from Ada's number saying, "I've settled with David." Believing she had forgiven him, the soldier moved on. Hearing all this, John's heart sank. He knew instantly that Ada would never disappear without a word. Without wasting time, he rushed to the police station and filed a complaint against David. The following day, John called him and said they needed to stop by the station for some verification. David, not suspecting anything, followed. The moment they entered, police officers surrounded him and arrested him. Hours turned into a long night of interrogation. At first, David denied every accusation. But after hours of questioning, he broke down and confessed. He admitted that Ada had confronted him about the stolen money. They argued, and in anger, he pushed her. She fell, hit her head on the floor, and became unalive. Panicked and afraid, he tried to hide his crime. David dismembered Ada's body and disposed of the parts in a bush far from the island. When the police followed him to the site, what they found was horrifying. Ada's face and private parts were missing, clear evidence of ritual use. John was broken. Guilt consumed him. He had been the one who begged Ada to employ David, the man who destroyed their family. When he told his parents the truth, his mother couldn't bear it. 2 days later, she became unalive from shock. Not long after, one of his sisters also passed away. Within a short time, John lost 3 members of his family: his sister Ada, his mother, and his younger sister. All because of one man's greed and wickedness. David was charged and remains behind bars as the case continues in court. This is a true life story. Certain details have been adjusted to protect the identities of those involved. Evil often hides behind a familiar face. Be careful who you trust, because sometimes the person you help may be the one who destroys you